I wanted to talk about my acquisition I got today, Beatles 65, the LP with those songs on it. I talked about before about how the American versions of Beatles records that were put out by Parlophone in the United Kingdom, how America kind of took those things and chopped them up, and they were able to get like 17 albums out of the 13 albums that were released in the UK. And how they did that was if an album came out and it had 14 songs on it, America on the Capitol label would make an album but only include 11 songs on it, and so 3 songs could be used someplace else, and they kind of compiled them and put them together in different ways. I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. I wasn't going to buy these Capitol records from America because I have all the UK versions and they have, the full song list. But I saw this one on eBay for $12, so I got it. And I think it's just a little interesting thing to compare and contrast. The record's actually in pretty good condition. You can see somebody labeled it, somebody named Anne. I can't read that last name. I'm afraid to take that tape off. But I think it adds a little character anyway. The second side's a little more scuffed up. But it's pretty good condition for, a record that was produced in 1965. But what I really wanted to show you was, so this is Beatles for Sale. So this is the Parlophone record from the UK. You can see the 14 songs on there. This is kind of what Beatles 65 is, but with only 11 songs. The first side is almost exactly like Beatles for Sale, except Kansas City is left off the end. And then the second side is almost totally different. Those 4 songs came from someplace else. And then Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby was the only one on side 2 that was on side 2 to Beatles for Sale. So they really did chop them up. I was always confused when I was younger. I'd see the Beatles doing live concerts, and they always seemed confused about which album is this one on, which album is this on. And I'm like, they don't even know which songs are on which albums. Well, it would have been very confusing because they really did mix them up. John Lennon has talked many times about how any true fan should buy the UK full versions because that's how they conceived them, and they pick the songs and put them in that order. And he doesn't really like the Capitol records. So I thought that was interesting. I thought I'd show you that. The other thing I was going to talk about was this I call it Rediscovering the Beatles. When I was younger, I was I don't know, 4th, 5th grade when I really started to really like Beatles songs. Crazily enough, one of the first albums I ever really paid attention to was Sgt. Pepper's, and so of course that was a land-breaking album, and it's one of the first ones I heard. Anyway, I've liked them or loved them ever since. For my pre-teen years through all my teen years, early 20s, maybe even late 20s. If anybody asked me what my favorite band was, I didn't have to think about it. It was the Beatles. I did branch out, and I started liking lots of other stuff. And when people would ask me, I would say, well, I always say the Beatles, but it might be, well, maybe it's Talking Heads, or maybe it's the Pogues. It just kind of depended. I'd listened to so much Beatles that for so many years, and they really didn't have that many albums to listen to for decades and decades, but that I started to like just take a stronger interest in other bands. And then what happened about a year and a half ago, I bought a new car, and it came with that Sirius XM radio on it for like a free month or something like that. And first thing I saw in there was the Beatles channel, and so I'm like, oh, this is really cool, the Beatles. And I started. It's like, wow, I forgot what a great song this is, or I forgot what great songs these were. And I started learning new stuff. I thought I knew everything there was to know about the Beatles. Not even a fraction. There's some crazy fanatics out there, I found out. But I'm like, wow, this is really good. And so I ended up subscribing to Sirius Radio, and all I ever listen to is the Beatles channel. But one thing I noticed was I had gone through like a big depression, and it just was not going away. And I had this playlist I would play at work, and it was just depressing. And I still think these songs are great, these songs that I listen to, but I was listening to a lot of Mazzy Star and the Smiths, and a group called Azure Ray that I really like, but very melancholy songs. What are some other examples? Just a lot of the very melancholy songs. Well, I noticed that this depression I had, and I just listened to this stuff all day while I worked. I started to wonder. I'm like, am I listening to sad music because I'm sad, or am I sad because I listen to so much sad music? And it's always been a question. It seemed a little bit of each. But without even meaning to do this experiment, I just started listening to the Beatles channel all the time while I was at work. And one day I noticed, I'm like, I'm in a pretty good mood. And then that mood kind of carried over for several days, which was unusual. And because I was definitely in some type of depression, a very lingering depression of probably 2 years maybe. It was really hanging on. And I started feeling better, and I started... Then my friend Lily got me a turntable, and I was able to listen to my old Beatle records again. And then I started buying Beatle records, and I started joining Beatles groups, online groups. And suddenly it hit me. I was like, hey, I'm listening to all this Beatle music. Maybe that's what's helping me out. And then I started thinking back. I said, when I was a teenager, I was a very depressed teenager too. So maybe these Beatles are what got me through these hard times, and maybe they're doing it again. I call it Rediscovering the Beatles. I might start a YouTube page called Rediscovering the Beatles with my little Beatles story. But that's why I started getting back into the Beatles. Is I started, it brought me out of this kind of really melancholic. It really was depression. I should have undermined it. It was hardcore depression, and it was really hanging on. And I've had depression a lot in my life, but it was just with me way too long. I was getting uncomfortable. And I really do think listening to this kind of joyous music has really helped me. And now that I've got into the collecting aspect of it, and I'm learning more about it, I feel like I'm interested in things again, and I'm starting to think about different things again, and I'm viewing life a little differently. I don't know if I can give the Beatles credit for all of that, because I have a lot of good friends and some great family. But man, it really seemed to help, and that's why I started getting into this. So I wanted to talk about Beatles 65 and compare it to, with the Parlophone UK records. But I also wanted to say why this has kind of started kicking up again. And it's only been a year or so. But every day I feel a little better. I honestly do. So thank you, Beatles. Thank you guys for listening. And I'll talk to you again.